So today is Friday, July 15th, and almost 5 o'clock p.m. So I'm about to go to a Riverdance performance at the theater in Dublin today. Riverdance is an Irish dance. You've probably seen it like in movies or TV. Once I show you like pictures and clips, you're like, I know what that is. It's like with your feet. And cameras are not allowed.
Dylan, group one. Oh, come on. How would you, Dylan? What? I can't understand.
So we're at the Tenement Museum, and I have a cold, so you won't hear me talk so much, but today is Wednesday. Today's Wednesday, July 20th, and then after the Tenement Museum, we're gonna eat lunch and then go to the Leprechaun Museum.
Compact, complex and cosmopolitan, Dublin in the 1700s was the second city of the British Empire. A seat of governance, a centre of learning and a hub of trade and commerce. Its spacious streets were lined with magnificent buildings, playhouses, clubhouses, theatres and parks, lofty terraces set around elegant squares, all monuments of wealth, power and privilege. Yet beneath this gorgeous mask lay another face of Dublin. On bustling side streets, barefoot children begged as hawkers and buskers plied their wares. Narrow alleys were haunted by vagrants and villains, and the city's charities were overrun with orphans, widows and young women heavy with child. From the late 1720s, a new street of high-class terraced houses was built in the capital. Vast in scale, with neat red brick fronts and finely finished interiors, it was unlike any ever seen in Dublin before. This was Henrietta Street. The man responsible for its construction was Luke Gardner, politician, private banker and property tycoon. A self-made man, over his long career, Gardner changed the face of the North Georgian city and amassed a huge fortune in the process. As one of the first residents of Henrietta Street, Gardner and his noble-born wife, Anne Stewart, sought to surround themselves with an illustrious group of neighbours. Noble peers, eminent politicians, high-ranking clerics, social climbers and military men, the leading lights of the capital's beau monde. In 1751, General Richard, Lord Viscount Molesworth, moved to number 14 with his wife, Lady Mary, and their growing family. Rich, powerful and cultured, the Molesworths moved in the first circle of society. Like their neighbours, they viewed their new house as more than a mere home. It was a vessel designed to display their wealth and good taste. From the sophisticated splendour of its double-height entrance hall, a grand sweeping staircase rose in stately procession to the first floor, or piano noble. Here, a splendid series of reception rooms offered views of the street in front and the ornamental gardens to the rear. Each was elaborately decorated in silks and damasks and fitted out with fine furniture, artwork, gilt mirrors and marble chimney pieces. 18th century townhouses, the kitchens were in the basement and family parlours were on the ground floor. And at the top of the house there were 2 full floors of bedchambers and nurseries. The first floor was reserved for entertainment, and throughout the winter season, when Irish high society abandoned their country estates for the pleasures of the city, these rooms were a hive of activity.
From vestibule to garret, the rooms were filled with fine ladies, beautifully dressed, but so crushed against each other that it was barely possible to move.
Here, Lord and Lady Molesworth held assemblies, dinners and dances. Gentlemen talked politics and toasted good health. Ladies took tea while others played cards or pursued the art of conversation. These were hubs of hospitality, where business shaded into pleasure, and convenient bases from which to enjoy the delights of the social season. Nothing can be so gay as Dublin is. The castle twice a week, the opera twice a week, with plays, assemblies and suppers to fill up the time. Room functions, however, were fluid and flexible. The smaller back room, for example, served for more intimate uses, as a study, a dressing room, or even a bedchamber for the lord and lady of the house. These spaces also served another, even more private function for high society women, as places for confinement during pregnancy and for childbirth. In September 1751, it was reported that here, in number 14, the lady of Lord Viscount Molesworth safely delivered of a daughter, Elizabeth. She was followed 4 years later by her sister, Charlotte. At once wife and mother, domestic manager and society hostess, the lady of the house played a crucial role in running these homes. Behind the facade, elite women expertly negotiated the blurred boundaries between the private sphere and the public world of their husbands. Like women, servants played a dual role in the household, at once essential and of little consequence. We keep as many of them in our houses as we do plates in our sideboards, more for show than of use. They were trusted retainers and causes of complaint. Day and night, these domestic staff would shuttle up and down the back stairs, from coal vault to bedchamber, cellar to dining room. Unseen but integral fixtures in the life of the Georgian townhouse. The arrival of summer heralded the close of the social season and the exodus from the city. Possessions were packed up, rooms were closed, and the household departed for the country, leaving these once busy homes silent and empty until winter. As the 1700s drew to a close and a new century dawned, even greater change was afoot for Dublin's aristocracy. Following the Act of Union in 1801, many departed the city for good, closing their grand town houses for the last time. A new professional class began to emerge in the city. Henrietta Street would soon be transformed into a legal enclave and later into tenements for the urban poor. As the city and the world changed, so too would the occupants and fortunes of those living at number 14 Henrietta Street.
Because these are the colours of Dublin tenements. Reckitt's blue on top, red rattle underneath. Common throughout the tenements of Dublin. In the Reckitt's blue on top there was a distemper which was meant to act as a disinfectant. You know, when we had gross overcrowding in these houses, you had tuberculosis, you had many other diseases. Now, I don't know how effective this thing was, but it was in the paint. And underneath in the red rattle, there was an antifungal element, supposed to prevent mould and kind of dampness and stuff like that. Again, I don't know how effective it was, but really it's the colours that people recognise, you know, and the minute they see these brings back memories to people.
This city is rotting. Dublin is getting shabbier, dirtier and poorer year by year. It is a metropolis for the poor, not for the rich.
By the end of the 19th century, almost a sixth of Dublin's population lived in tenements, mostly in conditions unfit for human habitation. A series of photographs captured tenement life. This is the story of these houses and the people who made them their homes. In 1911, overcrowding was a serious problem in much of the city. The 19 buildings on Henrietta Street housed nearly 1,000 people. Here in number 14 alone, 100 people lived under one roof.
I've been in a room in Dublin where there was no bed, a heap of sacks and rags in a corner, no furniture, a broken box with a fire switch. The people slept in their clothes. They never took them off.
Decay was everywhere, and sanitation was poor.
How is cleanliness possible when some 30 or more people have to share the same sanitary accommodation? The common hall and staircase become exceedingly foul, while the state of the common yard frequently beggars description.
Worst of all was the death rates of the city's young. In working-class neighbourhoods, nearly a third of children would not live to see their 5th birthday. In one terrible instance, Kathleen Davis, from number 7 Henrietta Street, lost 12 out of her 14 children.
It breeds misery. And worse, it causes a great waste of human life and human force. Men, women and children can never rise to the best that is in them under such condition.
Many of the women of Henrietta Street were both mothers and breadwinners. "70-hour working weeks were standard. Bread and tea were dyed staples, along with potatoes, cabbage, and occasionally bacon.
The man who works hard all day for small pay, and who, with his family, has no home but an insanitary and unsafe shanty, cannot be expected to make a good citizen, or to hold law and order in much regard.
Because of unemployment and job insecurity, many were attracted to the new radical trade unionism of Big Jim Larkin. Rosie Hackett, whose family once lived here at number 14, would use these ideas to champion rights, especially for women.
The heather of revolt against intolerable conditions has been dried in the 20,000 single tenement rooms of Dublin. Syndicalism set the heather on fire.
And though the famous Dublin lockout of 1913 resulted in a bitter defeat, the struggle of the city's workers brought tenement conditions into the spotlight. But just as these issues were being debated, Ireland entered a period of upheaval, known as the Irish Revolution. In 1914, with many Dubliners left unemployed by the lockout, the ranks of the British Army beckoned.
Dear mother, just a few lines, hoping to find you in the best of health as I am myself. This thing you see my foot resting on is a piece of German shell.
Army pay was attractive, and the Great War wasn't fussy about its recruits. Family men and young men alike soon found themselves on the front line. As the First World War ravaged Europe, there was conflict at home too. In the years that saw the 1916 Easter Rising and the War for Irish Independence, several men and women from the tenements lost their lives. Despite these dramatic events, the miserable conditions of tenement life would not improve for a long time. Large families continue to live out of rooms like the one you're standing in right now, battling cold and damp, disease and rodents. Here, tea was made, babies were born, loves were lost, fires lit, letters written, bread was broken, walls were whitewashed, and lives were lived.
What did you used to play?
We played, what was it, a great game in the Tenement House, believe it or not, it's hide and seek. There were so many places. The boy and girl could be missing for about 3 or 4 hours.
Let's do runaway now. Yes! Oh, Dom, you want to tell me she down there? Are you too scared to do it, Kelly? Kelly, Worcester, in her head in Worcester. I'm not a coward. Yes, you are. Oh, tell me, mother, are you? Tails, Rattler, boy, Penny, Rattler. No, are you or not? You're a good runner, Jerry. You should do it. Now you do it, Michael. I'll do it. Come on.
We enjoyed it in the sense that we didn't do anything else, and that's why we had played the game. We played the game because we didn't know what else to do.
Right leg back around. Left leg back around. Archie back around. Barky back around. Church love, go to the church love, go to the church love. Away, kneel down love, kneel down love, kneel down love. Away, oh the summer rain love, what the rain dance, Uncle Jan, he's a rider over, I'm in the kitchen, Timberland's kitchen, here comes the next man. Would you be shy to like knock and like meet the neighbours?
No, because there were so many families. We met them from the word go, the whole of the street, and all the different families were more or less like one family. Neighbour looked after neighbour.
Like to came on the street last night, we had rollers on the lampposts, and we would have swung around it, or played rounders, or played ball, or just played chasing up and down the street.
What time did you usually have to stop playing and come inside?
It could be about 7 o'clock, or 7 in the evening.
Was the front door of the house ever locked?
Never.
Never.
Open door.
So now we can see really that what they were talking about, you know, these people who live in the tenements, the social interaction was massive. They played from morning until night, and not like nowadays, you never see kids in the street now playing their laptops, computers and all that stuff. However, as I said, it's a very, very common trait with these people that tell us that they were very happy. Now, the next room we're going into is, I suppose, the move to the suburbs, really, when the people were moving out of the tenements. And initially, Ireland became the Irish Free State in 1922. Now, prior to that, there wasn't a very big concerted effort by the British government to provide social housing in Ireland. But from 1922 on, there was a push when the new independent government came into power. Notwithstanding the fact that funds were very low, a brand new government, etc., but it wasn't really until 1932, about 10 years after independence, that there was a major push for social housing. And indeed, when we're walking into the next room, just look out the back window, and we will see one of the very first social housing projects built in Dublin, Henrietta House, which is the flats behind us here, and they're still occupied and are in wonderful condition, by the way, for houses that were built in 1937, or flats, I should say, that were built. Now, initially, most of the social housing projects in the 1930s were in the city, big flat complexes. We can see them all over Dublin city centre. They weren't too worried about where they placed them then. I mean, aesthetically, they don't look great in some cases, but nonetheless, they were necessary. And then from the 40s on, the move was to the suburbs, big housing projects. Rather than flats, they were building housing schemes. And we'll see that in the video we'll show you in next door. Move to the suburbs, okay? Henrietta House is out there behind us. Again, this is probably typical of the flats that were constructed, as we can see them out through the window here. You can see the two blocks here which were built in 1937. And people tell me that if you got one of those flats in 1937, you just won the lottery. In fact, somebody said to me recently, if we get one now, I just won the lottery.
Henrietta Street houses, all 18th century mansions, were transformed into tenements from the 1860s. Dublin landlords, like Alderman Mead, realised the old house's potential to accommodate the growing population. People arriving to Dublin from the countryside after the disruption of famine and land wars. One such landlord, Thomas Vance, carved up number 14 Henrietta Street in 1877, adapting it into a series of 17 1-, 3- and 4-room flats. The term tenement represents a building of apartments or flats which share a common entrance and stair. Dublin's tenements began as well-meaning lower-income homes, made out of bigger historic buildings. At 14 Henrietta Street, partitions, gas lighting, and a steady water supply, as well as a small number of communal indoor toilets were introduced. Their rent was high, and so families piled in. By 1901, there were 87 people living in number 14. By 1911, that figure had climbed to 100, and 17 families called it home. Stable buildings behind the houses at Henrietta Street and across George and Dublin were also filling up. Industries and piggeries, abattoirs, and of course, family homes occupied these back lanes. Unsurprisingly, such places became overcrowded. Soon, through overcrowding and neglect, Dublin's tenements were known as slums. It was only a matter of time before disaster struck. In 1913, 2 houses collapsed on Church Street, killing 7 people. There was a public outcry. Government action was needed. 2 housing inquiries in 1914 and 1917 revealed what so many already knew, that much of this accommodation was unsanitary and dangerously unfit for habitation. Before reform could happen, bigger events took over. World War I, the Easter Rising of 1916, the War of Independence, the bitter Irish Civil War. As one conflict bled into another, housing improvement slid further down the agenda. Now named O'Connell Street, was being rebuilt and housing was back on the agenda. The dome of the mass suburb. A faraway, semi-rural neighbourhood filled with 2-story houses, hedges and lawns.
Are we stopping it here? Is there more?
No, this is it.
Oh.
This is the entirety of the
Oh my god,
Wow.
look at the
Wait,
front
for
of
real?
us.
Wait,
They
this
look
is-
definitely handsome.
What an amazing.
Dude, look at this. Look at this stereotype of Irish people. This is harmful.
Oh my god, Lucky Charms!
I'm dead. So we got a gnome, Guinness, a harp, and Lucky Charms. That's all there is to Irish people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Is this the museum?
Yeah.
No,
I didn't see it.
This is it.
I don't
No. It's,
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah,
curious.
so you can't read it this way, but you.
through the Giant's Causeway. When you get to the end of the causeway, push the door, push it real good, and then you will be in the Giant's room. A room that'll make you feel like a little leprechaun. You can jump up on the giant furniture, fight with the fork and spoon, take some embarrassing photos, do whatever you like. But don't leave the room. If it looks like a door, it is a door. Mind your own business. Hang on. And I'll come in and get you in a few minutes. Sound good?
all right.
Fantastic. Well, to open the door, we all need to say the magic words. So after the count of 3, we are all going to say Uscal on Duras. And that is the Irish for open the door in profound. So here we go. A hain, a do, a 3. Uscal on Duras. Pretty good. Head on in.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Magic is real.
You can record yourself, just no recording me. No
Got
more,
it.
just preparing yourself.
Oh.
Oh my god, bro.
I see my vertigo.
Not the vertigo. Whoa. Bro, watch it.
Oh, watch out.
Yeah, it's like a little hill right here. It looks so horrible. This is cool.
Wait, this is actually amazing.
Oh, what?
Wait, this a maze?
Push it. Yes.
Oh, we're stuck.
Where's the door? Oh, no, fuck away.
Am I supposed? Are you supposed to go through there?
No.
Definitely not. Over here.
Here it is.
Hey. Oh, that's